So just let you know, one lucky commenter on this video is going to get a free shirt from myaudionerds.com. So make sure you leave a comment and you'll get a free t-shirt. Also remember, at any time you can visit helpmedevon.com to get some of our vocal templates and presets to support this channel. So if you stumbled upon this video, I'm going to assume that you're looking for information about how to find the best microphone that suits you for your home studio or studio in general. Well, the first question that you should be asking yourself is, what is the use for this microphone? What do I mean when I say that? Basically, what I'm asking you is this microphone for vocals? Is it for guitars? Is it for podcasting? What is the use for the microphone that you're trying to purchase for your studio? So with asking yourself this question, it falls into a few different categories. In this video, we're gonna focus on 3 types of microphones. Of course, there are more microphone types out there, but we're gonna focus on 3 main types that you'll probably encounter. In learning about these 3 different microphones, you're gonna be able to figure out which one suits your needs the most. The 3 microphones that we're gonna be discussing are dynamic, condenser, and ribbon. So let's start with dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones have a great use. For instance, when you watch a lot of podcasts, you'll notice that they're using dynamic microphones. Now, dynamic microphones are less sensitive to sound compared to the condenser microphone that you probably have seen many times. A reason why I highly recommend dynamic microphones when it comes to podcasting is when you're podcasting, you really don't want a lot of other sounds to intrude into that signal. What do I mean when I say this? Well, really what I'm referring to is room tone or just higher end frequencies coming into that microphone. Think about it. If you're doing a podcast, what you're really trying to focus on is that vocal sound. Dynamic microphones aren't the brightest microphones in the world. They also don't reproduce frequencies as accurately as a condenser microphone. Now, this isn't a bad thing at all. For instance, the Shure SM7B is a famous and super popular microphone that people use for vocal recordings as well as podcasting. In a nutshell, when you listen to a dynamic microphone versus a condenser microphone, the difference might affect you in fidelity. You'll notice that a condenser microphone may sound somewhat more transparent, as the dynamic microphone may sound a bit duller. But once again, this is not an issue. For instance, if you have a very untreated room or a room that doesn't sound the best, maybe a Shure SM7B would sound better in your room because it's not gonna pick up so much of that high-end frequency that'll basically be reproduced as more like room tone in your recording. Also, what you'll notice about dynamic microphones is they can take loud signals. This can be beneficial to things like kick drums, things that are really, really loud. Other microphones may clip or distort and may not be able to properly reproduce those low-end sounds. You'll notice on a lot of kick drums that you'll see dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones can take a lot of heat. Now, when it comes to using a dynamic microphone for vocal recordings and things of that nature, you may need to use something called a cloud lifter. Some people think to themselves, if they just take their dynamic microphone and plug it right into their preamp, that they'll get a clean sound. But sometimes when it comes to your dynamic microphone, they need a lot of gain. So what a lot of us will do is we'll use a cloud lifter before the preamp. What the cloud lifter will do is it'll boost the entire microphone to 20 to 25 dB and then take that clean gain and bring it into your preamp where you can have a more level signal if you're trying to do something that has more of a quieter sound. The dynamic microphone can be very useful for kick drums, podcasting, vocal recordings, among a lot of other things. The SM7B is one of my favorite dynamic microphones in the way that it is able to do so many different things so well. It also doesn't require 48 volts or phantom power. Thus, another reason why it can take so much heat because it's not as sensitive as the other mics. Now, a condenser microphone is very, very popular to use for instruments, vocals, and a lot of other things that you probably have run into. Some very, very common condenser microphones that you may be accustomed to are things like the Neumann U87, AKG C414, among a lot of other condensers. A lot of times when you go into a recording studio and you look at the vocal booth, you're looking at a condenser microphone. Now, granted, this is not all the time, but this is a lot of times you'll see a condenser microphone. Now, a condenser microphone takes phantom power from your preamp. Condenser microphones do a really good job of accurately reproducing frequencies. You'll probably notice this a lot when it comes to higher end or brightness. You may even notice a fidelity difference between that and the other microphones. So I know what you're saying, why don't I just go with a condenser mic for everything? It reproduces the frequencies accurately and all these other bells and whistles that it does. But that's not always the case. When it comes to podcasting, using a condenser microphone is not something I'd advise. When you have this extremely sensitive condenser microphone sitting across from so many people and they're all talking, you're gonna have such a mess on your hands because the mic is extremely sensitive. You're gonna get a lot of that room tone. You're gonna get a lot of people talking in each other's microphones. You're gonna run into a lot of different different issues when it comes to this in the podcast space. Now, when it comes to the studio space, I highly recommend the condenser microphone because it's going to accurately reproduce those frequencies that you're receiving from your source. Condenser microphones are really good on things like overheads, on vocals, on guitars, on a lot of different instruments, even miking amplifiers and things of that nature. Now, the last microphone that you may be looking at is a ribbon microphone. Now, a ribbon microphone has become less common in studio spaces over time. A ribbon microphone is basically a thin metal sheet attached to two magnets that reproduce voltage. Interesting thing about ribbon microphones is it has an interesting way about how it reproduces those frequencies. Some even say that ribbon microphones have a tendency to mimic what our ears actually perceive, meaning the way that the microphone receives signal and reproduces that is very similar to how our ears perceive sound. There's somewhat of a tail off at about 17 kilohertz with a lot of ribbon microphones, meaning not as much high end, which is very similar to how our ears kind of work. When it gets higher up in those frequencies, our hearing tends to tamper down because we're not able to reproduce those frequencies as we get older, as well as we start to diminish in our hearing. So if you're trying to capture something and you want something to sound extremely natural, a ribbon microphone is a popular choice for some people. Now, the ribbon microphone is extremely delicate. You can literally damage the internal thin metal sheet very easily. Like I said, the ribbon microphone is pretty cool. A very popular use for the ribbon microphone for years was the Royer microphones, which were very popular in recording guitars. It became kind of like the industry standard to record guitars at some point in time. The Blue Woodpecker is also another ribbon mic that you can look up and try out for yourself if you're looking for a very natural sound. Another question you need to ask yourself when you're looking up these microphones is, what is the frequency response of these microphones? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, you can look at a frequency response chart of a microphone, meaning if you look at, for instance, a Neumann U87 frequency response, you'll notice a slight bump in the high end. Now, that's pretty accurate in the sense of it's letting you know, hey, there is somewhat of a bump in the high end. That's pretty obvious, right? Now, I can show you a far less expensive microphone that has a very similar frequency response chart. But does this mean that the two microphones are exactly the same? Absolutely not. One microphone can reproduce those higher end frequencies that it's boosting way better than the one that is far less cheaper. So when it comes to these frequency response charts, be very careful in what you're seeing. So in these scenarios, you do pay for what you get sometimes. Just because a microphone has a higher price tag doesn't mean that it sounds better or is the right microphone for you. Just be very careful when it comes to the frequency response charts as far as what you see on them and thinking to yourself that that might be the microphone for you. For instance, if you say to yourself, hey, my voice lacks mid-range, then maybe find a microphone that has somewhat of a bump in the mid-range. At the same time, if you're saying that you want to accentuate on those female vocals with the high end and brightness, then a microphone that boosts that frequency range could work really well for you as well. Basically, what I'm saying is when you read these frequency response charts, read them with a grain of salt because the way that they actually reproduce these frequencies may not be in your favor. Granted, use it as a guide to see how it is going to shape your sound as far as a bump in the low end or a bump in the high end, or it takes out some of the mid-range. Think about it in essence of, what do I want out of my microphone? Do I want more mid-range? Do I want more high end? Do I want a bump in the bottom? That's how I would go about looking at the frequency response charts, as opposed to saying to myself and thinking that just because there's a bump in the high end that it's gonna sound amazing. Another thing you should be looking at is polar patterns. Now, what are polar patterns? Long story short, polar patterns focus on how the microphone picks up signal. You have a cardioid pattern that picks up sound right in the front, and then it tails off as it goes behind the microphone. You have something called a figure 8 pattern, where basically it picks up signal from the back of the microphone as well as the front of the microphone. You also have omnidirectional, which basically picks up sound all the way around the microphone. Now, you may be saying to yourself, why does this matter to me, and why do I care, and why should I care about that? Well, say for instance, you want a microphone that can do many different things from a stylistic standpoint. If you're looking for a microphone that just records like a cardioid pattern, which is right in front of the microphone, then go for it. That may be for you. Having a multi-pattern microphone does cost more money, depending on the quality of the microphone. But if you're not looking for a mic that's that versatile, then yeah, you can opt for a microphone that doesn't have a variety of polar patterns. Now, having an option to switch between polar patterns can be very useful to you. For instance, sometimes when I do gang vocals, I like to throw my microphone in omnidirectional unidirectional. I like to have a bunch of people in the room yelling and screaming and doing loud crowd sounds, and it's really picking up the entire ambience of the entire room. In some situations, I may want to turn my microphone into a hypercardioid polar pattern, which will allow me to really get a very focused sound from my sound source, eliminating the sound from the sides even more. Let's say I want a figure 8 pattern where I want one rapper to be here saying something and another one in back saying something as well, and capturing that sound at once. Once again, ask yourself, do you need this, and are you going to be using it for that purpose? If not, then you'll probably just be going for something like a cardioid pattern, and you can call it a day. If you're doing some stuff like video recording, as far as podcasting or even vlogging, a shotgun mic would be great for you. The shotgun pattern is extremely narrow. When I mean this thing is literally just picking up sound right in front of it, that's pretty generally what it's doing, as well as a little bit in the back as well. So if you're doing things like field recording or on the go kind of recording for vlogs and stuff like that, a shotgun pattern is extremely powerful for you because it eliminates a lot of the sound on the sides that are more ambient and allows you to focus strictly on the source that you're pointing it at. So basically what I'm getting at is there's a lot of questions that you should be asking yourself when it comes to getting into buying a microphone for your home studio or just yourself in general. The biggest question you're asking is, what am I going for? If you're looking to just record vocals, then there's a certain type of microphone that you should be going for. For instance, like the Shure SM7B for dynamic, as far as having a room that isn't the greatest, but at the same time is still amazing when it comes to vocal recordings. Even if your room isn't the best, you can still go for that condenser microphone. Condenser microphones are so versatile in the sense of being able to record instruments, vocals, and all kinds of sound sources in a very transparent and natural way that sounds extremely high end. Most vocal recordings for music are recorded on condenser microphones, I'll be honest with you. But that doesn't mean that other microphone sources or types are not used. The best advice I can absolutely give you is test the microphone for yourself if you can. If you're lucky enough to be in a studio and there's microphones there, I highly recommend you guys listen to yourself on those microphones, test it out and see what it is. And then research those microphones after to see, why did you like that microphone? Why did you hate that microphone? Now, of course, we can get into tube microphones and all kinds of other styles of microphones, but for the most part, I just wanted you to understand the difference between the dynamic, the ribbon, and the condenser, and maybe stray you on a better path of why you would choose one of these three. So I hope that was really helpful. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe. Also, make sure you visit helpmedevon.com for some of our vocal chains and templates and presets. And also comment below so you can win a free AudioNerds.com shirt, as well as let me know what you would like advice on next. I hope that was helpful, and until next time.